really throughout college, that was just something that I love to do. I always wanted to write the papers rather than take a quiz or an exam or anything. And so when I graduated, I go, well, what do I do now? I had plans since I was 12 years old to go to law school. Now that's not happening. What am I going to do? So I started freelance writing, journalism, photography. Then that's when I took up photography, and I have been writing consistently since then. That was 8 or so years ago, or more than 8 years ago. Wow. All right. Yeah, it's flying by. But I always had that creative on top of the pieces that I was getting paid for, journalistic articles and stuff like that. And the photography, I was always writing creatively also. So one of my favorite writers is David Sedaris, who's a humor writer. I found out about Dave Barry and some writers like that who are humor writers and just, hilarious. And I tried to emulate some of their writing. So in 2018, I think it was summer 2018, I published my first book, self-published through Amazon, KDP, CreateSpace, Junk Sale. And that was a collection of humorous short stories and essays that I had written over the years. And I had decided to put into a collection. Originally, what I was going to do was every other week or every month or something. I had all these stories, all these essays. I was just going to put them up on a website every other week, and people can check it out. And then one of my friends published a book of short stories, poems, and novellas. Thomas Eugene Kaufman, one of my friends, very close friends, and I'm like, that's such a great idea. And he had a lot of writing that was really great. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do this too. And I looked into it. I'm like, that'd be cool to have a little collection, something that you could put together. That's your own, you're holding your own writing in your hands. So that's when I self-published that book. And that's kind of then from there, I thought that was going to be a one-off. But from there, I'm like, no, I'm really enjoying this. I'm going to keep doing this.
Everyone, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. I have someone here today who has gone from your side of the microphone as a listener, which is amazing, and now he's here to talk about his writings and all the great stuff. And we've just been nerding out about guitars for the last, 20 minutes. But now we're here. We're ready to talk all things authorship. And Patrick's here with me, Patrick Lombardi. Patrick, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Nice to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So I think we talked originally that you found the show and you were listening to the podcast. This is true, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, all right. You know what? This is the first time that I've had a listener on as a guest on the show, just so you know. So no pressure, but do you remember how you found Living the Next Chapter?
I know from our conversation, I said I was going to try to find out who the author was, but there was an author's page. I either saw her on Twitter or on Facebook, and she had shared her website and different things she did, because I think she also had a service, maybe not necessarily self-help, but more like a publishing sort of assistance. And so I went to her site and she listed all the podcasts that she was on, and that's how I found one of yours was on there. I don't know that I actually listened to her episode at the time. I think I just started from a certain point and then just have been listening since then. And I think I listened to, I forget how many episodes I listened to before I reached out to you. I sent you an email because it was just phenomenal between the conversations that you have, the questions and commentary that you provide and responses that you provide, but combined with your guests as well, just the amount of useful information that I was receiving, and, different, not just me, but your listeners are receiving, and the advice that they have, that the authors on the program have, the writers have, was just invaluable. And I mean, in the first few minutes of each podcast, but really every few minutes you have something that I'm like, oh, I got to write this down. I got to remember this for later on.
Nice.
So there's a lot of that going on. So I reached out to you about it. I'm like, this is phenomenal. And I'm happy to be a listener.
Okay. So before we jump into our content today, because again, you're the first listener that has been on the show, and I'm so excited. I have questions. I really do. Is there what beyond what you just mentioned, that was very kind of you, as far as the guests that have been on that you've heard episodes of, anything that stands out to you that I should do more of as a host, or the type of guests we have, anything like that I could use as to kind of focus on the future for the podcast?
There's really no, if I'm pressed, I I'd like to learn about the people, and I think you do a really good job of interviewing, getting to know that individual, and then also showing, how that comes up to life in their creations, in their writing. Um, every once in a while, I'm curious a little bit more about the person, but I mean, it's easy enough for me to just Google the individual and find
Yeah.
their bio or anything like that. But I mean, that's not, if I'm pressed, I would say I guess we could do a little bit more background on individuals. But I
Okay.
mean, otherwise, it really everything. I think when they start to get into, especially particularly your guests, when they start to get into helpful tips for writers and for people aspiring authors, I think you do such a great job of asking follow up questions that, like, I'll think something and then you'll ask it, and or
Okay.
or the
Good.
person will say it. So I really I don't have any
Okay.
real constructive
Well, I
criticism.
know you're speaking for everyone that's a listener, so no pressure. But it's great. I love having a chance to talk to someone that listens to the show. I've had emails from people around the world, which is great. But
Hmm.
to have them here with me to chat is a huge bonus for me as a host. So thank you for coming on the show, and thank you for sharing your thoughts. I really appreciate it. And in the future, if things come up, and you're like, Dave, hey, try this, or maybe do a little less of that, let me know, because that's going to help everyone, right? So thank you for doing that. It's awesome.
Yeah, thank you for having me again, and it's an honor to be the first listener who's a guest on the podcast. I had no idea until you just said
Okay, so tell him what he's won. I don't know.
it.
I don't have a prize for you right here handy. Maybe an Ebo for your guitar. I don't know.
Oh
We'll
yeah,
figure out something, right?
that's a cool. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's like, what's an Ebo? You'd have to know. Anyways, so glad to have you on the podcast. Can you tell everybody where you are, Patrick, in the world?
I am in Mercer County, New Jersey, which is central New
Jersey.
Jersey, and I
Okay.
probably, if there are any New Jersey listeners, I probably lost about half of them at
Yeah.
this point.
Okay. Did we send some smoke down your way at all from
Yes.
Canada?
So
Yeah.
we actually, I got out of work one day early. They closed the offices on, it was probably the second day, I guess, of the smoke.
Yeah.
Probably like about 3 days we had it, and then we had a delayed opening, and then eventually it's sort of dissipated. But
Yeah.
yeah, how is it up by you?
It's not bad. I talked to a listener in Chicago, and he was getting upset with Canadians for sending all the smoke down there. And I'm like, well, actually, where I am in Ontario, we don't even really have much of it, a
Oh
little
wow.
bit, but it seems to be just kind of heading down to you guys. So it's one of our new exports to the US. We're just going to send smoke to you, apparently. So enjoy. It's free. So at least you don't have to pay for it, but there you go. Tell everybody a little bit about your writing background. When did you start writing, and kind of give us a little background on what you've done to date?
I guess when I actually started writing was 8 years old for the first time, doing it on my own, not a school assignment, and something that I actually wanted to do. And then, I mean, that was just a silly little picture book, and then there were some to follow that. And I think when it got a lot more serious, I would say probably college. And I had started college. I had enrolled with the idea that I was going to go to law school, and eventually by sophomore junior year, I had dropped that minor, that law and justice minor, and decided I wasn't going to law school. But I had maintained my English degree, or English major with concentration in writing. And really throughout college, that was just something that I love to do. I always wanted to write the papers rather than take a quiz or an exam or anything. And so when I graduated, I go, well, what do I do now? I had plans since I was 12 years old to go to law school. Now that's not happening. What am I going to do? So I started freelance writing, journalism, photography. That's when I took up photography, and I have been writing consistently since then. That was 8 or so years ago, or more than 8 years ago. Wow. All right, yeah, it's flying by. But
Yeah.
I always had that creative on top of the pieces that I was getting paid for, journalistic articles and stuff like that, and the photography. I was always writing creatively also. So one of my favorite writers is David Sedaris, who's a humor writer. I found out about Dave Barry, and some writers like that who are humor writers and just you know hilarious. And I tried to emulate some of their writing. So in 2018, I think it was summer 2018, I published my first book, self-published through Amazon KDP CreateSpace, Junk Sale.
Mm.
And that was a collection of humorous short stories and essays that I had written over the years. And I had decided to put into a collection. Originally, what I was going to do was every other week or every month or something. I had all these stories, all these essays. I was just going to put them up on a website every other week, and people can check it out. And then one of my friends published a book of short stories, poems, and novellas. Thomas Eugene Kaufman, one of my friends, very close friends, and I'm like, that's such a great idea. And he had a lot of writing that was really great. And I'm like, I don't know if I could do this too. And I looked into it. I'm like, that'd be cool to have a little collection, something that you could put together. That's your own, you're holding your own writing in your hands. So that's when I self-published that book. And that's kind of then from there, I thought that was going to be a one-off, but from there I'm like, no, I really enjoying this. I'm going to keep doing this.
It's kind of like guitars, right? You can need another one, right?
Yeah,
you write a book,
yeah,
you can
exactly.
need another book, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Just like pens.
Tell me more about junk. Tell me more about junk. What's it called? Junk? It's junk sale.
Junk sale.
Tell me more about that. Where did the title come from?
So that was a title of one of the early short stories that I wrote. And I keep looking over here because I got it sitting there just in case I have to reference it. I don't want to.
Well, we got to see it. Of course. There you go. Junk sale.
Yeah. Junk sale. How do I move it?
There's perfect. Yeah.
It's in frame. So that's actually the updated cover, because after a few years, 2 or 3 years, I'm like, I need to update this cover. The original one was one that I had designed because I couldn't pay a graphic artist to do it. I'm like, I just got to do it myself. Put it out, and it's free. And then after a few years, I go, I got to update this. People keep thinking it's a kid's book. So
yeah,
and it's not really for kids, but it's the first half of the book, like I said, are the short stories, and it's really a lot of different interesting characters. I really wanted to get into the different personalities. And when we had our first conversation, one of the stories I brought up was Prized Possessions. It's like the second or so short story in there. And I wanted to write something where the character was completely opposite of me. And, it's a young guy, but just every decision he makes would just not be it would either be the opposite or just really something an avenue I wouldn't go down. And that turned out to be one of my favorites from there, because it was just completely not off the walls, ridiculous, but it's just really, I was getting surprised as I was writing this. I'm like, I can't believe he's doing it. Meanwhile, I'm the guy scribbling it down. So I really got into the characters for the short story elements. The essays, on the other hand, I followed, if anybody listening is a David Sedaris fan, or if you're a David Sedaris fan, I really followed his structure of essays. I mean, I didn't plagiarize his work, but where rather than the pieces just be funny vignettes of little occurrences that happen in your life, I really tried to flesh them out into some type of message. It was mostly silly info, but it tried to formulate an actual essay rather than it just be, here's a funny anecdote, or here's something hilarious that happened, an inside joke with my family. But it was more so I have essay that some scenes from when I worked in a restaurant, and sort of I give an unreliable narrator type of position or try style to that. And then there's now I'm blank. That's why perfect thing I had it here, because I'm forgetting on the other essays. Then when I had first gotten into journalism, stuff like that. And then there's an essay about my mom, who's from Italy, and she keeps everything in the freezer. So it's just that sort of idea, and some other, a couple other little pieces in there too. So it's definitely varies. And I feel like, I could tell that some of the pieces were written years and years before the book came out, and then other ones were a little bit newer, a little bit more mature. So it's certainly a collection.
So when you're pulling that together, was there stuff that you left out on purpose, or that you had to cut and you wish you could have kept? Anything when you look at it now, you're like, if I had a chance besides the cover, I'd like to kind of change this about the book?
There are certain pieces. One of the essays in particular support local music. I like the message because it's to support local music. That's an element of the essay. Another part is a little bit more introspective, but I wind up rewriting that essay, and it was featured in Stay Salty, Life in the Garden State, which features a number of New Jersey authors. It's a book put out by Read Furiously, who's a publisher here, and features other New Jersey authors, poets. There's a comic, I believe, in there, photography, and all those really cool elements. It's a really cool collection. I rewrote it, and I thought that was stronger. And now I read it and I'm like, oh, I can rewrite this again. So I have certain feelings like that for some pieces in the book
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh, maybe this wasn't ready to go out. This is a newer piece. Maybe it just needed to sit a little bit longer. And then I have other pieces that I had felt that way at the time that didn't make the book. I actually have a few essays that just didn't make it because they just did not feel ready. So, but certain other elements of it, I'm pretty happy with, because I had heard an interview. I think it was an interview with David Sedaris where he says, don't build an essay around a joke. Like if you have a funny line, um, I guess you could, it's fine to use that as sort of starting point if you want to. And that can, I mean, I'm always a proponent of just writing, even if it's not stream of consciousness, if you have to outline and then you get into something, or if you just want to, you're a pantser and you just want to get into it, because even if it's not great to start off, I mean, you could always fix something. But then in addition to that, it sparks other ideas. I mean, you could be out in left field and then all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, there's something over by second base, or, something silly. And, but his whole notion is don't try to keep a joke that you think is funny or a line that you think is funny just because it's going to get a laugh, because that could be detrimental to your piece. And fortunately, I had heard that interview before I was really ready to put these essays and stories into a collection, because I had a lot of paragraphs like that where it was just, I'd go back and read it and I go, like, why is this even here? And then I get halfway through the paragraph and I go, oh, that's a funny line. Okay, I can't get that. I can't take that out. But hearing that interview, then I go back and I'm like, well, let me try it without it. Take out the entire paragraph. There's just something that's completely out of nowhere, and it reads significantly better. And I think it's stronger pieces for that. So I think thinking back to it, to answer your question, there's a little bit of both. There's certain things that I'm happy that I did, and certain elements that, maybe I could have taken a little bit more time.
You think there'll be a sequel to the book at all in the future?
Yes, absolutely. So okay. I've had essays that I was writing while I was working on this book. And then I also have written certain pieces over the years, and they've just sort of been sitting. I'll write something and then I won't look at it for a year or more. And then I go back to it. I'm like, I don't even remember writing this. That's hilarious. It's just a memory that I have of this like event that I'm talking about. I'm like, this definitely happened, but I don't remember sitting down and actually typing out these 5,000 words or whatever it is. So, I'd like to go back with fresh eyes and look at it, but I've been sitting on it for too long. So now I have some, my wife is my first reader, and then I have some family and friends who are going to be my beta readers and are now going through it. Then I have my former boss is a professional editor. So I'm going to have him take a look at these essays, and then I'm hopefully next year I'll put something out. If not next year, very, very soon after on the horizon, but
good.
There will be.
What was the response when Junk Sale came out? What were you hearing back from readers? What were they saying?
So I didn't know if people were being nice, but I was hearing a lot of positive feedback.
Well, that's good.
And I go, I don't think you actually read it, but because I was very, I guess, self-loathing or doubtful of it, and I just more so put it out for me, not as like a vanity type of publication, but it's something that I had been working on, or stories that I've been working on and showing my wife. And she's like, oh, these are funny. She was really enjoying everything that I was showing her. And she's extremely supportive. So, you think that she might be a little bit biased just because I'm her husband, but also she's very honest with me. So if she said like, I don't get this, like if I got those types of response, I would get those. She's not afraid to be like, this doesn't make any sense. Or this, I don't get what's so funny about this. So I was getting positive responses from her, and then, putting it out into a collection, hearing positive responses from family. And there were a ton of people who didn't read it, but my family and stuff who didn't even crack it open. But then I started hearing some positive feedback from people I didn't even know, and they would message me on Facebook or through I'd see their reviews on Goodreads or Amazon, and I'm like, I don't even know who some of these people are. Like, that's not that I have a ton of reviews because I don't, but it's really great to see that, and that was very reassuring.
It's nice because that's unbiased, that's genuine feedback coming in from someone that doesn't know you and hasn't been in your home or played your guitars or whatever, right? So these people are really kind of giving you that unbiased look into your book, and that's good feedback. Anything that you pulled from there where they gave you some insight that you could use as a writer?
Off the top of my head, if I think that's a good question, because I was looking a lot for that, because there are some, 3 stars, which as a writer, you don't think like, oh, that's not too good. But you want those 4 or 5 stars, but you really pay attention to what they've said in it, because it's not necessarily a bad rating. It's,
Yeah.
somewhere
No,
in the
yeah.
middle, just a little bit more than 50%. So I would take a look at those reviews and think, well, what was sort of missing there? What was that missing link? And that would bump this up another star or two. And off
Yeah.
the top of my head, I can't really think of anything. I can't recall, but I know I did exactly what you were asking. Well, how can I improve
Yeah.
from this and not just sort of shake it off and be like, well, this person really doesn't know anything. Meanwhile, they've got 1,000 books on Goodreads. They're a reader. They know what they like,
Yeah.
and they decided to pick up this humor book, so I should give them at least some credit. So I tried to do that with some of those reviews. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head, but there's
Any advice to somebody that is going to leave a review for an author? What kind of information would be useful to you as an author to hear back from a reader?
I think a great method is, I think they call it the sandwich method, where you start off with something positive, you go into
Yeah.
something not negative, but
Yeah.
constructive,
Constructive.
something
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
could have done better, they
Yeah.
can do better in the future, something to keep in mind, and then end with something
Awesome.
positive, maybe your overall um, feeling of that work. Where you start, oh, I really like the characters, I really like the dialogue that is brought into each story, the different voices that I hear. However, there wasn't a lot of character development, or there
Yeah.
wasn't, this is marketed as humor, and this entire story was very serious and it made me sad or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then you end off, but overall it was very well written or something. So
Yeah.
I think that method is great because it really draws you in. There are other variations of that where there's something positive, then you go into something constructive and give your argument, and then you kind of level it off with a
Yeah.
closing summation sentence. That's another method, but little variations of that, because it also, a lot of times we may keep something in our writing, being writers, speaking for writers, or I guess I should say that I'll speak for myself, that I'll keep something that I don't know if it necessarily works, but I feel like I can't take it out, that it's just, if I remove it, the piece won't flow as well, or it's an informative sentence or paragraph that needs to remain, or a little element that is kind of somewhat crucial to the entire story or to the entire essay. But I'll decide to keep it ultimately, and maybe an editor or somebody will tell you like, "Nah, you should remove that." So the entire time I'm thinking, like, oh, I wonder how people are reacting to this. If you write 50,000 words, 60,000 words, meanwhile
Yeah.
you're worried about individual 100-word paragraphs,
Mhm.
to hear individual specific comments like, oh, that worked, hearing those positive responses can be very invaluable, because you're just hearing, that what you did worked. And I
Yeah.
mean, it's not always gonna be exactly what you're looking for. Like, if I write an entire paragraph about my neighbor's dog, I may get, you could essentially get 1,000 reviews on your book, none of them say anything about the dog, and you don't know whether or not that was a
Yeah.
good paragraph
Yeah. Yeah.
in there.
Exactly.
But having those positive responses, I mean, are going to hit certain elements, and okay, well, that's good. That's something to keep in mind for my next book or for my next piece. That's something to keep. Whereas the constructive criticism really speaks directly to what you can do better in the
Yeah.
future. And I mean, not everything's going to be positive, so you can't look out for that, I guess.
Yeah. Because I see when I go to look at a book to purchase and I'm making a purchase decision, and all I see is a wall of 5 stars and 2-word reviews like, great book, great author, loved it. It's like, well, come on. Like, do you have nothing else besides, like, there should be a little more detail there than just a 2-word review. And if I see all 5 stars for everything, it's like, wow, this book must be like the best book in the world. Like, no one's giving you anything like, it could have been shorter, it could have been longer. I didn't get it. It was over my head. Like, there's something, I want something. as a person coming in for the first time seeing a book, it gives me some kind of identity to go, okay, these people actually read the book and they're giving me feedback as a reader so that I know if it fits for me before I buy it, right? So I'm encouraging everyone that comes on the show, whenever we talk about, go out, buy the book, but please leave a review, but leave a thoughtful review of the book, because it helps everyone, helps the author, helps other readers. It's something that you can give back to the author as a gift for their time, because you go through editors, you go through reviews, you go through beta readers, you have all this work behind the scenes to do a good job on your book. And then when you get great author as a review, you're like, there's a lot more to this than just great author. Could you give me a little bit more detail when you read my book? That would be really helpful. So I'm just encouraging listeners that when you do this, because sometimes it's an afterthought. You're like, oh yeah, I should have left a review for that. Yeah, you should. Please, everyone listening, leave reviews every time you buy a book. Support your authors. It really does mean something to us.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the independent authors, the local authors who aren't on any lists or winning any awards. I mean, those are just each time you see a new review, it's just amazing. Like it's extremely helpful. Like you said, it helps readers decide, and especially you think about it like buying another product. If you're going to go on even Amazon or wherever you go, you're looking up the reviews on Best Buy, and you're taking a look at that negative stuff also. So if you're afraid to say something that's maybe that you didn't like about the book, I mean, I would prefer to hear that type of stuff because it improves my writing later on. But also the other side of it for the readers, they can look at it and be like, well, it doesn't really apply to me. I don't feel as strongly about that point you're trying to make or the argument you're trying to make. I'm still going to give this book a shot. So you're not necessarily doing a detriment to the writer, to the author. What you leave is just invaluable in the end.
Amazing. Okay, so let's switch gears from junk sale. What came next? Like what have you worked on after that?
So my second book is also have that here for a quick reference.
There you go. Come on.
It's in
there. Perfect.
Flare there. Yeah. The New Jersey Food Truck Cookbook. So I was at a book signing back in I believe it was spring or summer of 2021. And it was for Anthony Russo. He had a book, Dragged into the Light, that had come out, and he was doing a book signing over at Commonplace Reader in Yardley, Pennsylvania. Awesome bookshop. And I was talking to him a little bit, and I was asking about his career, and then he started asking me questions. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. So I was talking to him for a little bit, and I had been writing for bestofnj.com at the time, and I was doing a food truck series, a hiking series, a historic, all centered around New Jersey. And he had mentioned, have you ever thought about turning them into a book? And I'm like, I thought about that, but I have no idea how to even go about it. So he recommended Arcadia Publishing, and they're based out of, I believe, North Carolina, but they do a lot of regional publications, not entirely regional publications, but a large percentage of their books are regional. And so he recommended reaching out to them. So I went to my editor-in-chief of Best of NJ, Vinny Parisi, and said I had this idea. Oh, well, actually, before that, I sat down at my desk. I'm like, well, how can I differentiate this from the series? I want to include photos. I want to include background on the food trucks, because they're just an amazing community. There's so many different individuals, and they really run great businesses that people don't know about. And they just think of food trucks as lunch trucks or brooch coaches and wouldn't dare to eat at them. But a lot of them used to be executive chefs, went to culinary school, all of them really care about the products they're putting out. So I wanted to make sure that was exemplified in the book, but then also what's a little cool element for new readers, for readers of the series, fans of the series. And I thought, you know what, they could each contribute. Maybe they'd be interested in contributing recipes, like a recipe or two or three for a food truck. So I went to my editor about that idea that I had, and I just wanted to let him know, like, hey, I'm going to do this. I might use some photos. And he loved the idea. He wanted to partner up and do it together. So from there, we established a list of about, I think there are 20 trucks in here. We break it up by region of New Jersey, so north, central, southern, and then shore, and include a few from each. And they all different styles of food. I went and re-interviewed or took new photos of ones that I had already spoken to that I'm close with, and then brand new food trucks that weren't featured in the series are also in the book. photos, their background. And I mean, we have just so many different people who have lived in New Jersey their whole lives, or came from another part of the country here. Or we have one Miss Foos, Yummy Food Truck. She came from Japan in high school, and so just a lot of different cultures, and it's very diverse, and just a really very proud of the collection, the individuals that are featured in there. So that's how that that took almost 2 years from that inception to when the book finally came out, maybe a little bit more than a year and a half. So that came out this past February.
Did you do the photography in the book as well?
Yes. So pretty much,
Nice.
I think every single photo that's in there is mine.
Nice. Well, that's good. And then, okay, did you try every recipe that you feature in the book?
Yes, I'm pretty sure I tried every single one. I don't think there's a single. I'm trying to think of an item. I don't think there's one
Really?
item in there that I haven't tried. Yeah, I think
Okay.
everything that was photographed.
I have to ask, is there something that really stands out to you that was a surprise recipe that you tried, or you're like, oh, I didn't think it would be like this amazing, and it's one of your new favorites from the book?
Specifically, so most of my favorites, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah.
Most of my favorites, I knew that I was going to like different cookies and different recipes in here, breakfast tacos. The one that surprised me was you could actually see they have a couple photos here. Oh,
Yep.
Where do I go? This right here is the tofu picadillo, and we're not mirrored here, so I'm going back and forth. That's Henry and his fiance in the background, Brenda.
Yeah.
They own Cubano Express, and so that's a tofu dish. He did one that was regular and one spicy, and I didn't eat too much tofu, so I wasn't having too high hopes. He was an executive chef up in New England, and she worked up there with him. So I knew that the dish would be good, but I didn't think I'd enjoy it as much as I did. And it was phenomenal for something that you're eating and not realizing that it's just bland tofu, because he just puts in so much flavor. And that was something that was surprising, because not that I didn't have high hopes, I shouldn't say that, but I just thought, okay, it's just going to be another, it's also, I think he said it's vegan dish as well.
Wow.
So it's all around just it turned out to be an excellent dish. So that's something that surprised me for sure.
Any chef that can get a parking ticket at work that's amazing to me. I don't know. That's pretty cool. And I love food trucks. I know here where I live, we've gone to food truck events, and they're some of the most amazing food that I've ever had. It's like, and yeah, like you said, these are professionals. These aren't like, hey, I have a truck, I'm going to see if I can make pancakes or something and sell them. No, these people are like super amazing, talented chefs and cooks, and their ideas and recipes are just crazy. So I love food trucks. So when did this book come out then?
February, this past February.
Oh gosh, it's brand new. So what's been the response for this one then?
I've gotten mostly, I was expecting a lot of feedback about the recipes themselves. I wanted to hear a lot about that. And I have been, that people are trying different cookie recipes. They're trying there's a sliders, a couple different burger recipes in there. So they're trying those items out and loving them. But I also received a lot of good feedback about the background, the bios of the trucks. I'm like, wow, I had no idea about this or that. And that's mostly from people who got the book just because they know me, that I didn't even expect that they'd read them. They're just like, support Pat, I'll get his book. And hearing like, oh, is this true? Like, did they really do this? Did this really happen? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I didn't lie about anything. This is actual, these are human beings. These are family members. They're a large industry that they really unite, and they really all get along. I shouldn't say all, but a lot of them get along really well. They're helping each other out at different events and all that stuff, festivals. So yeah, I mean, everything I put in there, I have just learned over the years, and think, now it's just in the back of my mind. I just know a lot about the food truck industry. So to hear that feedback from other people, like, wow, I had no idea about this. I hope it encourages them to sort of go to more events. They're a lot of fun.
Awesome. I love that. Any hesitancy at all from some of the food trucks to give away their secret sauce recipe that they protecting? It's my mother's recipe, and I don't know if I want to share it with the world. Were they free and open with the recipes?
I had both sides of it. So there were some that all right, I'll give you this recipe. If somebody can replicate it, then I'd like to see them try. So I got a lot of that. And then I had some that I was like, you want my secret recipe? Like, you want this item that I specialize in? And I'm like, no, you don't have to give me your secret recipe, but something that you think
Yeah.
exemplifies your truck that you offer, that you like, and you think other people could even make at home. Certain things, you might need a commissary kitchen for, or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just couldn't make in your own kitchen. But little items like that. I mean, you give one, two, couple recipes, and so it was almost split. I think there were more that were into the idea of giving recipes than ones who weren't. And there were certain trucks that I didn't get responses from, that just were, or they said they were into the idea and then just kind of fizzled out. And
Yeah.
I guess they didn't want to be featured because they didn't want to give away items. So they ultimately weren't in the book. But other than that, I was able to talk to certain ones who were a little hesitant, a little weary about giving away recipes. And
it's a great idea. Like that, a very unique idea. I don't know if I've heard of anyone doing something like that. So that's quite unique. And then you kind of have to sell it to them as well, right? You have to like tell them of the idea of the book, and they get to trust you with these recipes and bringing you into their trucks or bringing them into their circle. That's kind of a trusting thing for them to do. But I love the fact that you're just putting a spotlight on great cooks and chefs and small business owners. That's a wonderful thing to do, to spotlight. I love that.
Yeah, I love that, because there are a lot of local authors who do similar ideas, not necessarily food trucks, but they've really taken their audience and been able to show them different elements to boost up local businesses. I mean, the most popular nationwide that we know is Dave Portnoy, who goes to the local pizza shops and does his reviews, and then they blow up if he gives them a good review. So we do this. A lot of journalists around, at least in New Jersey, and I'm sure throughout the country, do this on a much lesser scale. But the people who live here every day, are hopefully checking out our articles, seeing the book in Barnes and Noble, and being able to go out and be, like my publisher is probably not happy with me saying this, but I tell people, like, even if you don't want to buy this book, flip through it, check out these food trucks. Like, they're just amazing. Check out the photos. There's the center insert with just photos and some captions. And I mean, you could really see what they're offering. They, like you said, they allowed me to go inside their trucks. So there's a level of trust. I mean, because how many times have you gone to a restaurant and they just, like,
come on back, come on back. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So this is put front and center, so you can really see, and you get to learn and know a lot more about them, and really see what they go through, the challenges and everything that's really associated with food trucking and cooking and driving and everything.
Yeah, they're doing everything. They're not just cooking. They're not just doing one thing. They're doing everything for their business, and I love that. And I love that you're putting the spotlight on that. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
It's really good. Okay, so is there going to be another cookbook in the future? Recipe book, maybe?
That's possible.
Okay,
Right now, I'm not thinking too much about it, but that's a possibility.
There's always a possibility, right? Okay. Yeah. Well, or a guitar book. You could probably do that as well, because you got all these guitars are hanging around you there. Great. So for you then, are you continuing to still write the way you were before the first book? Are you still actively doing that as well?
I would say that I'm doing it more so, and it's actually really interesting. Well, I don't know. It's interesting to me because a lot of what I was writing was nonfiction, and my creative stuff was humor.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge comedy fan, but also I am a huge horror fan, and that's kind of what I grew up with. My mom's really into ghost stories and horror, and as a kid she would throw something on Langoliers or some Stephen King movie, or and different TV shows that they had at the time. And some of the early stuff that I had written were horror short stories, mostly just ghost stories. And now during my son was born in September, the very end of September. Every year around mid to end of September, that's the season, I'll start watching more horror movies. I'll usually, if I see one in like December, I'm like, all right, I gotta wait till September and I'll watch it. And so I went on leave. I was on leave for about 6 weeks, and that was, Halloween season. So I was devouring horror. I was consuming so many horror films, TV show, any type of horror content that you can name, video games, comic books, podcasts, audiobooks, just a ton of it. I was eating it all up. I mean, we weren't sleeping at all. So that's a lot of what I was doing. So NaNoWriMo, I'm not sure if many people, I think a lot of people are familiar with it at this point. National Novel Writing Month, which is November 1st throughout the month. And the idea is to write 1,667 words, I believe, a day through every day of the month. And by December 1st, you have a completed novel. I never participated in it just because I'm like, I don't have the talent or the patience to write a novel. I don't think I could do it. This year, I still felt the same way. I'm like, I don't think I could do it, but I have a lot of horror story ideas. So this is my opportunity. I'm gonna track it. I'm gonna keep track, but I'm gonna, rather than it be a novel, it's gonna be a number of short stories. Try to hit 50,000 words. I'm pretty sure I hit it. I think I surpassed it in November, because what was happening was I went back to work in the beginning of November, and I didn't want my wife to have to worry about getting up every 2 hours to he was about a month and a half at the time, getting up every 2 hours in the middle of the night, and because she was still on leave. And I go, you know what, like I can sleep like 4 hour blocks maybe. So I got up for the day at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would get up with him and I'd put him back to, feed him, put him back to bed. And I'm like, I'm just going to stay up for the day because I'm not going to sleep another 2 hours. I'm just, this is how it's going to happen. So I would get up every morning and I'd write, and I'd get 1,600 words or plus. And then what's interesting about it is some days you sit down and you can just type out, you don't want to stop. You hit 3,000 and you're like, oh, it feels like I just typed 100 words. Then you have the days where you're struggling to get to 300 words. You and it kind of compensates where you're able to, you have those beneficial days, and then you have those slower days, and then eventually you get past your goal, just sake of averages. So I think that's a great motivational tool, NaNoWriMo. If there's anybody who thought about it and kind of had that hesitancy that I had, that now I'm not, I can't write a novel, but I enjoy writing this or that, to try it. And at worst case scenario, you've written more words than you would have otherwise. But even if you didn't reach 50,000 words, I mean, there are so many different options there. They provide tools also, which is cool. Different writing options on there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I think they even have sort of virtual writers groups that you can join on nanowrimo.org. I want to say it is. So it's really cool. I forget what you asked me. I don't think I answered your question at all, but but yeah. No, if I've written anything since then. Yeah. So I think I've really certainly picked it up. Then it sort of died down, the writing, after November and then December, because then we go through sleep regressions and stuff like that. Then I'm not getting up at 4 o'clock anymore. A month or two ago, I decided I'm getting up 5 o'clock in the morning every morning. My son was pretty consistently getting up between 7 and 8, and I'm like, this gives me a solid few hours to really sit down, read, work out, get ready for work, see him in the morning, and then go off to work. And so I've been getting up around 5 o'clock in the morning and just writing every morning, or at least attempting to write. Like I said, there's some mornings you write 50 words and you feel like you just ran a marathon. Just want to pass out.
I love it. Well, to balance a new life in the house and a busy place and write, that's hard. That's really hard to do. So I met an author in Australia, and he does that. He has like a shed out back behind his house, and he gets up at like 4 or 5 in the morning and writes for 2 hours while everyone's sleeping, and then goes back in the house and does normal dad duties. And I'm like, wow, how do you do that every day? But he's like, it's the thing that lights me up. It's just like, I can't not write. And I'm like, that's awesome that you have that time. And I'm not a morning person, so that would be my struggle, is to do that. I'd be like my head on the page. So no, that's amazing that you have found your little groove and your rhythm. That's really cool. Any tips for authors as well then, with a young one in the house besides early morning writing? Anything else that works for you?
That seemed to be the best rhythm that worked for me, because I'm more so a morning person, but I quickly got used to just that lack of sleep, that sort of just getting up bright and early in the morning. And even if you put them down eventually, I was feeling worse going down for 20 minutes, or maybe not 20 minutes, but like a half hour or two. Then getting up, I would feel better at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning. So that seems to be the thing that's worked best for me. I think another element of it, and this kind of goes for, I guess, new parents as well as writers, is just not having any expectations, where there have been some mornings kind of recently, my son's been getting up earlier, and I've just been getting annoyed. Like, what are you doing waking up, man? Like, obviously that's what he's supposed to do. He doesn't have, he doesn't have to worry about work or sleeping,
No.
getting his beauty
Yeah.
sleep or anything.
How
He's
rude.
just going on natural. So, so really not having any expectations, I've felt a lot better, and because you can try to fit in certain elements. I'm trying to be careful, because as I say it, then I start to jinx myself. Like if I say, okay, well, when he naps, I can, you could try to fit something in, and then the next time he goes down for a nap, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, but really not having those expectations, not being so fastened, so glued to your routine that when it's broken, or if there's a little hiccup, you sort of get derailed. Because for a little bit I was, and I'm like, I gotta get out of this funk. I can't really have these expectations, because when it's ruined, when you have these expectations, when stuff, and I mean that even exists when you don't have children. You have these expectations and nothing, it doesn't play out that way. You really, I really would set myself up, to be in a bad mood. So trying to go with the flow, I guess, is the best sort of, if you can't fit in writing one day, and I at least try to get it the next day or something. But sort of like that author had mentioned to you, like writing lights you up, lights me up. So I think a lot of people listening here, if not everybody listening to your podcast, feels exactly the same way. So it's really good for your mental health, or at least if you feel like it's really good for your mental health, it's something that you should make time for. And seeing what loosely works best for you.
I love it. And one thing we talked about when we had our pre-chat is that you had something to offer out to our listeners, which I thought was quite unique. Again, I don't get very many offers like this to give something to the listeners for free. But first of all, before we jump into that, where are you most active online if somebody wants to talk to you about their food truck, or they have some junk to sell? Where are you that people can connect with you online? First, we'll start there.
So my website is patricklombardi.com. I have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, now TikTok. I just started a TikTok page. It's actually kind of cooler than you would expect, but because I was a little reluctant to start one of those accounts. So Facebook is Patrick Lombardi Writer.
Okay.
And then Twitter and Instagram are both the same. They're Pat Lombardi 4. TikTok is Patrick.Lombardi, I believe. And I mean, I'm mostly active, I would say, on Facebook out of any of the accounts.
Okay.
There, but I do try to check those regularly, and if even if I'm not posting, I'll still try to interact. And if you message me on there, I'll certainly respond back. And so then the email address, if you reach out, contact@patricklombardi.com.
Okay. So let's talk about this free offer you have on patricklombardi.com. There's something that you're offering out to everyone listening, and can you kind of explain what it is, first of all? And then we have a very secret inside code that we want to share, and it's highly, highly important that you remember this code. It's very secretive and quite yummy. Can you explain to everybody what's available on your website?
Yes, this is very classified information. So
yes, please, everyone, sit close, everyone.
If you go to patricklombardi.com, you can do it on your web browser, on your computer, or you can do it on your phone. patricklombardi.com, it pops up where you can, it says, check out my new article, 10 tips on handling writer's block and distractions, and just things that have been helping me over the past 9 months since my son was born. Sort of this new environment of parenthood, and also trying to balance a job and part-time job and also write creatively on the side. So 10 tips there, and you can click the link. I think it says read now or something like that. So you can do that on a phone or on your computer. Now, in addition to that, at the bottom of the article, even if you're not interested in the article, but you're curious about if my book's any good or worth any time reading, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a book that says a button, that says junk sale. So if you click on that, you'll be prompted to type in the password muffin.
Okay, wait, muffin? Wait, muffin. Okay, everyone, did you hear that? Muffin. Don't tell anyone. They have to listen to the episode to get that code. It's a secret code, everyone. Please. They have to listen to the episode and completion to the end. You notice we're doing this at the end, Patrick. There's a little...
Yep.
Right. Okay, anyway. Continue. Muffin. Yes, please go.
So, all lowercase letters, MUFFIN. they'll give you a prompt to type in a password. You type in muffin, and you have full access to the book. I think it's a PDF version. You can read it right there in the browser, or you can download it, print it out, and that's my.
So
my
now
gift,
everyone now knows the Muffin Man. It's Patrick. Yes. So Muffin is the password. And you need to go there. And again, don't tell anybody this. Come on. You listen to the end of the episode. This is a gift for you. Nobody else. They have to listen to get the gift. Muffin, all lowercase. Yeah. All right. PatrickLombardi.com. Go there. Go all the way to the bottom, you said, right? At the bottom of the page?
Yep. It's the article pops up first, and you can read anybody can read the article. There's no password for that. But then if you want the book, you got to scroll all the way to the bottom, click the button junk sale, and type in your password muffin. Highly classified.
Highly classified. There you go. Does it come with a free muffin recipe or no? Is that in the book?
That would be a good idea. Maybe that'll be the next. There'll be another password at another point, and then you get the muffin.
Well, you have to come back for that in the future. Then that's one way to get you to come back to the show.
Yeah.
There you go. So I have to ask: are you going to listen to your own episode on Living the Next Chapter?
You know what? I probably will. I'll if I don't get to it immediately, I'll get to it eventually. I'm not. It's funny because I was talking to my wife about it today, because she goes, "Oh, it's probably weird hearing your voice," but I interview people a lot. So, and then I go to transcribe their interviews. I've been hearing my voice for years. I don't necessarily love it, but it's not as weird as it was in the beginning. So I could probably go back and listen to it and not be.
Well, you should listen, because you're a great guest, and you need to come back again in the future as you write more and more books. I want to keep encouraging you to keep writing, because what you're doing is creative. I love that you're not just kind of doing what's typical that you might hear a lot of authors talk about. You're doing something completely different and unique, and that needs to be celebrated. And I think you got more ideas than you have time. It's my perception of you. But I love that you're chasing those dreams and creating something that helps people. I love the cookbook. It's such a great idea. And the recipe book and the food trucks. That's just such a unique thing. I'm really captivated by that. So I think I'm going to be buying that book for sure. I'm going to be grabbing that one. And then junk sale. That's so unique to get a little pieces of you, between those covers, and get a little insight to who you are. That's kind of cool as well. So I love it. And I can't wait for what's next. So the door is always open. Patrick, come back anytime you want. I'd love to have you come back. We can talk about guitars again, and we can talk about muffins, and what else is in our freezers. Apparently, that's a thing. I have to go see I don't even know what's in my freezer. You mentioned your mom likes to put everything in the freezer. I have no idea what's in my freezer. Now I'm curious. So I'm going to go check. There might even be some muffins. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come back. That would be great. Well, I'll have to write a guitar book, and then that way we'll have an excuse to just talk for 45 minutes to an hour about guitars.
Okay, I'm in. I'll buy that for sure. I love it. Everyone go check out Patrick's information, all the information in the show notes. There's that special password. Again, it's muffin, all lowercase. Don't tell anybody. And go there and grab it. Thank you, Patrick, for this. And again, if you buy a book from any author, including Patrick's, please leave a great review and let Patrick know what you think of his work. Patrick, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you being here and being part of our podcast community. LivingTheNextChapter.com is our website. I have an offer for you as an author, if you're listening, and you're wanting to build your website for your book. I've had so many authors come on and they're struggling in this area. I'd love to help you. All of the websites that I built for my different podcasts, I have experience, and I'd love to help you and get you up and running. I can help you with your domain purchase. I can help you with setting up your podcast, making it really simple. And if you love Canva, we can even set it up on Canva for you, and you can do all your own maintenance. You don't need to hire anybody. We'll help you get set up. So if that interests you as an author and you want a website for your book, let me know. We can do this. I can help you. LivingTheNextChapter.com is the website for the podcast. You can find me there. I'd love to help you. Reach out. Let me know if I can be of assistance in any way. And thank you again for listening to Living the Next Chapter. Today is where your book begins. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.